All right, let's dive into this one. You sent us some stuff on this film, Prime Cut from 1972.
Okay.
Looks like a crime thriller,
Mm-hmm.
but also like neo-noir,
Right.
and even like satirical action.
Interesting mix.
Yeah, and it's directed by Michael Ritchie with Lee Marvin, Gene Hackman, Sissy Spacek, Angie Dickinson.
Wow. Some big names in there.
Yeah, and it's only 86 minutes long, so it seems like it's pretty
Tight.
tight. Yeah, exactly. So we're going to try to really dig deep into this movie, go beyond just like a basic plot summary.
Right.
See if we can find those little surprising details and insights that you're looking for.
I like it.
And yeah, let's see what we can uncover about this film. They call it grimly iconic, so that should be interesting.
Yeah. I mean, just from that description, right? The blend of genres, the actors involved,
Mm-hmm.
it definitely makes you think that there's going to be something more to it than just like a simple action flick or something.
Right. And the source material we have goes straight for the jugular, describing the opening scene. You've got a man literally being turned into sausage
Oh, wow.
in a Kansas City slaughterhouse.
Okay. So they're not messing around.
No.
Yeah.
No, they're setting the tone right away.
Dark.
Dark and unsettling. The story revolves around Lee Marvin's character, Nick Devlin. He's described as this cool, aging Chicago enforcer who's sent to collect a debt from Gene Hackman's character, Marianne, who's described as a greasy, psychopathic meat magnate.
So we've got these like larger-than-life characters right from the start.
Yeah, and it starts as a simple debt collection, but it turns into something much darker. Devlin uncovers a human trafficking operation. Young women are being auctioned off, including Sissy Spacek's character, Poppy.
Oh, wow.
And Devlin ends up rescuing Poppy, which sets up this violent confrontation. The source calls the film a blood-soaked satire of American capitalism, masculinity, and consumption. So, what jumps out at you about that setup? What are your initial thoughts?
I mean, the thing that hits me first is that opening scene.
Right.
It's not just violence for the sake of violence. It's like disturbingly symbolic. You're taking a human being and turning them into a literal commodity.
Yeah, it's very in your face.
It is. And it sets up that central metaphor right away.
Yeah.
And then going from this like gangster story to human trafficking, it shows you right away that the film is going to explore some pretty dark themes.
Right. It's not shying away from anything.
No. And that setting, the slaughterhouse, it's not just a random backdrop. It feels very deliberate. Like it's saying something about how people are being treated.
Like meat.
Right.
Like just pieces of something to be used.
Exactly. And the source actually says that while the plot might seem like a typical gangster versus gangster thing at first, it quickly becomes far stranger, darker, and more subversive.
Interesting.
Yeah. They describe it as a crime thriller set in a slaughterhouse America where literal and figurative butchery are interwoven.
Okay. So it's taking that metaphor and running with it.
Totally.
Yeah.
And the pacing is described as brutally efficient, no wasted time. Apparently it blends grindhouse exploitation, art house symbolism, and deadpan satire.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
It is. It sounds like a wild ride.
Yeah.
And the climax of the film apparently takes place in a wheat field with a combine harvester chasing Devlin.
A combine harvester?
Yeah. The source calls it both symbolic and thrilling.
So how do you see that? How does a combine harvester fit into all of this?
Right. Well, they say it's like industrial death meets rural Americana. So you've got this contrast between this peaceful setting and this huge machine of death.
Juxtaposition.
Yeah, exactly. And it makes you think about how those settings, those images, they contribute to the film's message beyond just being a regular crime story.
So it's not just about the plot. It's about the whole atmosphere, the visual.
It's about everything working together to create this really specific feeling. And the characters, too, they seem to play into that. The source describes Lee Marvin's Nick Devlin as the soul of the film, saying he's stoic, deadly, and tired, and his gravitas anchors the absurdity.
Interesting. And what about Gene Hackman's Marianne?
Well, he's seen as like the embodiment of American gluttony and greed. The Force calls him grotesquely charismatic. They even say that he's laughing while he's auctioning off women.
Oh, wow. It's pretty dark.
It is. And then you have Sissy Spacek. This was actually her first film role. And she's described as heartbreakingly vulnerable as Poppy, with a performance that's fragile, honest, and eerie.
So you've got this contrast between these really strong personalities.
Exactly. And the supporting characters are described as over-the-top henchmen and rural grotesques, which adds to this twisted fairy tale vibe.
A twisted fairy tale.
Yeah, it's like they're taking these familiar elements, but twisting them into something darker, more unsettling. And apparently the relationship between Devlin and Poppy forms the emotional core of the film. The source says they're two lost souls from opposite ends of the road trying to get out clean.
Okay. So you've got these two characters who are both trying to escape this world in their own way.
Exactly. And that adds a layer of humanity to this otherwise pretty brutal story.
Right. So it's not just all doom and gloom. There's some heart in there, too.
Yeah, it seems like it.
And let's talk about how the film looks and sounds. Yeah. The source says the cinematography by Gene Polito has a clean, sun-bleached look, which creates this stark contrast between urban mob cool and rural nightmare Americana.
Okay, so you've got this visual clash between two different worlds.
Exactly. And the source mentions that the slaughterhouse imagery is visceral and unflinching without being sensationalized, while the field sequences are beautifully composed chaos.
So they're playing with these contrasts again, both visually and thematically.
Right. And the music, the score, is by Lalo Schifrin, and it's described as funky intense, leaning into noir jazz and crime cool. But the source also notes that it sometimes feels tonally mismatched.
I guess that makes sense given the mix of genres we've been talking about.
Yeah, it seems like the film is constantly walking this line between different tones. And on top of the music, you've got the mechanical grind of the meat industry and animal sounds to really underline the brutality.
So it's using sound to heighten the impact of those visuals.
Right, to really immerse the viewer in this world.
And the source really emphasizes Michael Ritchie, the director's vision. They say he has a satirical eye, and that Prime Cut is packed with subtext.
Okay, so there's a lot going on beneath the surface.
Yeah, they identify some key themes, like meat as metaphor, obviously.
Yeah.
Where people are literally being treated as commodities. American capitalism, the intertwining of crime and business, this moral rot that it exposes. And then there's masculinity and violence, contrasting this old-school honor with modern depravity. They call it a eulogy for a dying kind of man.
Interesting. And there's also innocence and exploitation, with Poppy being the main victim of this system.
Right, so it's looking at the victims as well as the perpetrators.
And the source says that Ritchie's goal is to take this pulpy trash and turn it into a grim political cartoon. So, with all these layers of subtext, do you think the film succeeds in being more than just a violent crime thriller?
I think it definitely tries to be more than that. And you can see Ritchie's ambition in the way he uses all these elements. The meat as metaphor is so central to the whole film. It's not subtle, but it's effective. And the way it portrays American capitalism, this idea that human life can just become another commodity to be bought and sold, it's pretty scathing.
Yeah. It's definitely not a feel-good movie.
No. And then you've got that contrast between Marvin's character and Hackman's, that clash of different ideas about masculinity and how that plays out in this corrupt world. And by using this familiar crime thriller setup, Ritchie manages to sneak in this grim political cartoon, as they call it. It's thought-provoking, even if it's not always easy to watch.
Right. So it's not just mindless entertainment. It's trying to say something.
It is. But the source does mention some criticisms, too. They say that the 86-minute runtime might feel too fast to some viewers, with certain plot points feeling rushed, and the shifting tones between satire, horror, drama, and grindhouse might not work for everyone.
Yeah, that's a lot to pack into such a short runtime.
It is. And it's also noted that some people might find the violence and exploitation disturbing or excessive, even if it's intended as commentary.
Right. So it's definitely not a film for everyone.
No. And finally, the source suggests that the female characters, apart from Poppy, are underwritten, and that the film doesn't offer much comfort or resolution.
So it's bleak.
It is. It sounds like it doesn't pull any punches.
And the source highlights a few specific moments as being particularly key and memorable. The opening meatpacking sequence. Of course, Sissy Spacek's naked vulnerability, the woman auction, the combine harvester finale, and the dynamic between Marvin versus Hackman.
It sounds like they're all really pivotal moments.
Yeah, moments that drive home those core themes. So with all that in mind, what kind of impact do you think those specific scenes have on the viewer?
I think those scenes are like the punches you were talking about. They're designed to shock, to provoke a reaction, and to really stick with you. That opening meatpacking scene, it's brutal. And it sets the stage for the whole film. Sissy Spacek's vulnerability in that scene is really hard to watch. It highlights the powerlessness of these women who are being exploited. Yeah. And then the woman auction. It's so blatant in its satire. It's showing you just how dehumanizing this world is.
Right. It's making a statement.
It's exactly. And then the combine harvester finale. It's such a striking image. This machine of destruction chasing Devlin through this vast empty landscape. And it speaks to the power of these industrial forces, these systems that are grinding people up. And then the dynamic between Marvin and Hackman. It shows you two different ways of navigating this world. Two different forms of masculinity, both flawed in their own way.
Right. So it's not offering any easy answers. It's just presenting these complex characters and situations and letting the viewer draw their own conclusions.
Exactly. It's forcing you to think.
Okay. So what does all this tell us about Prime Cut? It sounds like it's more than just your average crime movie.
Way more.
The source calls it a vicious little beast. It's been called a lean crime thriller, a satire of American consumption, even an exploitation flick with art house ambition. They say that beneath all the blood and grit lies a brutal poetry, and that it's all held together by those incredible lead performances.
Yeah, they acknowledge that it's gritty, grim, and laced with unsettling imagery. So it's not going to be for everyone. But for those who are interested in noir with a touch of Midwestern madness, they say it's a rare cut of 70s cinema that still packs bite. They give it an 8 out of 10.
So it's a film that's willing to take risks, to push boundaries, and it might not always be pretty, but it's definitely trying to say something.
Absolutely. And I think that's what makes it so fascinating. They take this familiar genre, the crime thriller.
Yeah.
And it uses it to explore these really dark and unsettling themes. It's not afraid to be provocative, to make you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes it so effective.
Right. It's a film that stays with you.
It does. And that's a sign of a good film.
So the final thought for you, the listener, is this Prime Cut explores these themes of consumption, exploitation, and the dark side of American society back in 1972. So how do you think those themes resonate today? Are they still relevant, or have things changed? Has that brutal poetry lost any of its power? What do you think?